you people back in the Shire, turn your porch lights off because we're coming home with a trophy.
Oh, hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this wide world of Sharkland. Welcome to SharkCast, a podcast dedicated to the greatest sporting club in the history of the world, the mighty Cronulla Sharks. This show is brought to you by Dyson Logistics, the Royal Motor Yacht Club in Port Hacking, and Jason Hawes at Cripps & Cripps Real Estate. My name is Sam Shinazzi. I'm an OG from 2015, watching the team for a lot longer than that, of course. And this is a bit of a special episode. We don't usually invite the opposition onto the show until later in the week. We have a very special guest. He's a Rabbitoh. He is a lifelong Rabbitoh. He's an OG podcaster, much like myself. We used to know each other, which we'll get to, known as Fox Sports. He's also been at Wide World of Sports. His whole life is sports. Sports. His best friend is a WWE superstar, and I'm not even kidding. He married his childhood sweetheart, Charlie, who we all love and adore. He's the father to a dog, Link, who a bunch of us bought for Charlie and Matt, and we technically own part of Link.
Also true.
Matthew and I have the same heroes. Tim Riggins, Barney Gumble, Elliott Smith.
RIP.
Matthew is the host of Boom Rookies podcast, a absolutely phenomenon around the world. Part of the ESPN family, which we never thought that would happen. We'll get to that. And his favourite teams are South Sydney Leeds, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Dillon Panthers. Please welcome, after probably the longest intro ever, and I'm going to give you some music as well, Mr. Matthew Bungard.
Oh, well, I mean, nothing gets the people going like Waltz Number 2 by Elliott Smith, but thank you, Sam. What an intro that was. I'm just going to have you follow me around everywhere I go and be my hype man after that. That was fantastic. Old friends from our Fox Sports days. I then, went on to a couple of other companies, Sydney Morning Herald 9 and now ESPN.
Yes.
And my love for Souths has never wavered. And when the opportunity came on the SharkCast popped up, I jumped at the opportunity. So it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you for being had. Now, tell me and everyone else about Boom Rookies, when it started, how it started, and where you've ended up.
Yeah, so back when I was working at the Sydney Morning Herald in 2015, more as a general news reporter than a sports reporter, I started a rugby league podcast with two of my friends. We just do it in my mate's bedroom or sometimes at my house or whatever. And like very, very amateur hour stuff. But like because a couple of us had pretty good Twitter followings in sort of rugby league circles, we ended up we got like a couple of hundred loyal listeners off the bat and grew that to like over 1,000, like averaging a couple of thousand listeners like a few years after that. And then that's when we started to do a Patreon so that it was like kind of a secondary income for us. And then after that, one of my original co-hosts, Mitch, got a job at the NRL, so he had to part ways with the show, and that was going to be the end of it until basically at almost the exact same time, ESPN came in and said, "Well, we need a rugby league podcast for our stable of podcasts," and we were looking at Boom Rookies. So once I explained the situation that was going on there, they were like, "Yep." And I said, "Look, you're going to need a new co-host." I got my mate Nick Campton in, who is an ABC sports writer, a really good sports writer, one of the best. Go and seek out his work if you haven't read it before. And he's been able to step up and fill Mitch's shoes brilliantly. And so we've been doing that. We've been operating as ESPN's official rugby league podcast since the start of the 2023 season. I went to Vegas and covered the Vegas games for ESPN at the start of this year. And yeah, it's just been great. It's been a really great career change, and I'm really loving it at the moment. It'd be nice if that could be sort of complemented by Souths being good on the field, but we can't have everything we want in life, Sam. So I'm just going to have to settle for that.
Yeah, well, you're doing pretty good. We will talk about Souths throughout this podcast due to your co-hosting and also because you're coming to town on Saturday night. This is a Sharks podcast, though, and we want to know about your relationship with the Sharks. Tell us all things Sharks for you, growing up, adulthood, friends, family. Tell us about the Sharks to you.
Well, I always had a bit of a soft spot for the Sharks. I always loved David Peachey. He was one of my favourite players when I was a kid. Absolutely loved the Peach. And the Sharks were always a relatively inoffensive team, like when I was a kid, if you know what I mean. Like they always had likable players. They were always like kind of decent, but they weren't like dominant to the point where you start to dislike a team. I remember really pulling for them hard in '99 when they won the minor premiership and didn't win the comp. Yeah, and so they were always a team that I liked. Like I wouldn't say like I had like a scientific tier list of teams outside of South that I like, but I like Parramatta, I like West, I like the Sharks, and then I met you. And obviously, we would talk so much about footy at work that I always had a soft spot for Cronulla because, like, I love talking to footy with you, and you were so emotionally invested in it. And again, it's no skin off my nose if Cronulla win games, unless they're playing South. So I was always hoping that Cronulla would do well as a result. And then I remember 2016 came around. I was by that point at the Herald working in rugby league. So I did a bunch of stories about the grand final. I actually interviewed a fan that was flying back from London just to be at the grand final. That was really cool. And then I remember going to the pre-game pub with you in the Arvo in 2016 before going to work after that and just being really happy that the Sharks won. So yeah, I've always had a soft spot for Cronulla. I would say that they, along with West Tigers, are probably the two teams I like to see do well the most, aside from South, of course. So yeah, they've always been a team that had a soft spot for, and then you helped accentuate that. And then I guess then going forward, I think you know my friend Sarah as well. She comes on does the Sharks preview on our podcast at the start of the year. Like she's one of my best friends as well, and a mad Sharks fan too. So having so many good friends be Cronulla fans was a part of that as well. And yeah, so yeah, I'm usually happy to see Cronulla do well unless they're playing South like this weekend. But I mean, I guess that you won't have to worry about that.
Well, we should talk about 2016 now because you did one of the great things in my life on that day. You weren't going to the game. You were going to work afterwards. But you came to see me and our old co-host Adam Newman at this pre-game function we were doing out at Homebush at the pub. You came just to kind of give me a hug and wish me well, and I've never forgotten that. And it's you're for all the bad things everyone says about you, including myself, you're a beautiful guy because I remember that. That was a great thing that you did, and it really made my day. Aside from winning the comp, that was a really special moment.
Yeah, because I remember I was on like blogging duties and player ratings that night, so I had to go back to the office rather than being at the game, unfortunately. And so I went out and saw our former co-worker Mark Cleary as well, who was at another pub at the same time.
In the game.
Exactly right. And yeah, that was a really good day. And obviously, I was so happy for you, given that we'd just broken our drought 2 years prior. So yeah. It was a nice time, the mid 2010s, when you had like Souths, Cowboys, and Cronulla all breaking droughts in the space of 3 years. That was cool. So.
Yeah, it was fun. Tell me about your thoughts on the 2024 Sharks. You watch all the footy. It's your job to watch all the footy. Tell me about where you think they're at, where they've been, where they're going, and we will talk more about this throughout the episode. But give me some thoughts on this year's Sharks for you.
Yeah, I've really flip-flopped on Cronulla at various points this year. After last year especially, we kind of adopted an official viewpoint on the show that we weren't going to get excited about Cronulla being on top of the ladder until we saw them knock off some of the competition heavyweights.
Yep.
Then they had that great win over Brisbane. They had that was the week after. They had that great win down in Melbourne. They had that awesome win against the Roosters at Magic Round. And I thought, here we go. These guys are for real this year. Like, this is not 2023. This is a little bit different. And it hasn't exactly worked out that way in the last few weeks. But they're still, they've been unlucky. Like, they could have easily won that Canterbury game, for example, I think. But by and large, they haven't been as impressive in the last few weeks as I would have liked. I thought that Cowboys game again, like they just weren't really in the races. And now we're looking at a 6-week stretch where they've come through all those tests, and it's a pretty soft run home for Cronulla, like compared to other teams. Like I don't think you play a team I think you play Manly are in the top 8 right now, and that's it in terms of top 8 teams down the stretch. So now we're going to get back to September. You're going to finish like 4th or something, and we're going to be having the exact same conversations we did last year. And it'll just be really interesting to see if they can beat the allegations this time around, because it was just so strange to me that like they had those 2 really good wins against the Storm and the Roosters back to back, but then they had that disaster game against Penrith. I have no idea what happened there. Then you lose to Parramatta without the Origin players, and then Sharks and Brisbane, great game, great win, and then the last month or so has been a little bit tough again. You blow the Tigers out of the water, and other than that, it's been 4 losses. And look, given where Brisbane are right now and what they've been since Origin, that win is aging worse with every week as well. So yeah. I still just don't know what to think, because this is the same conversations we were having about Cronulla last year, right? It's like, yeah, sure, but let's see them do it against the big teams. And then they beat a couple of the big teams. And they beat them well. That Storm win was fantastic. And that game against the Roosters was one of the best games of the season. And it was Nicho Hines' best game of the season. But I think that the conversations around him, especially, not from Sharks fans, just from rugby league fans in general, have gotten very poisonous. And I think that what happened at Origin stuff definitely had an effect on his mental state and his abilities as well. So it's all been a very odd run-in for Cronulla so far, where they passed what we thought were the big tests in inverted commas, but have then dropped some games that I thought they should have taken care of business of in easily.
All right, well, let's talk about the king of carrying by Nicho Hines. Now, let's talk first about what you just mentioned, the kind of poisonous kind of attitude from I guess critics and fans. Why do you think that is the case, for starters? Why do you think people are so obsessed with this guy in the way they are?
I actually don't understand it at all, but this is something that we talk about a lot on our show, where I feel like the internet and the way we absorb sports coverage in general has just made us much more cynical and much nastier than we used to be when it comes to discussing athletes, especially. Like, for example, like Trent Barrett was a great player, right? And we all remember Trent Barrett as a great player. If Trent Barrett had the career that he had, but had it in the social media era, people would have torn him down all the time. They would have called him a fraud and a choker, and they would have said all this horrible stuff about him. But we didn't get that in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And for a guy like Nicho Hines to be constantly tarred with this stuff when he's just like a really good dude, like I've interviewed him before, he's a nice guy. He's never had an off-field issue. Plays a really attractive brand of football in a team that plays a really attractive brand of football all the time. To just have so many detractors, I'm not really sure why it is. I can't really wrap my head. Like if someone is a jerk, or they act like a prick on the field, or they've had off-field issues, like they've been found guilty of an assault or taking steroids or something like that, I can understand people rooting for their downfall, right? But Nicho Hines, I just have never understood why people are obsessed with wanting this guy to fail. It makes no sense to me. And yeah, now we're at a point where I'm just waiting for him to shut them all up, because he had a couple of really big opportunities to show that he was the man in this little mini losing streak that you've had. And unfortunately for him, it just hasn't worked out. He misses that kick from the sideline against the Dolphins. He shanks that pretty easy field goal attempt against Canterbury. And even in that Titans game, it comes down to the last play, and he kind of just puts in that nothing cross-field kick. And so that, to me, watching him in those games was just frustrating, because I'm rooting for him. I want him to shut these idiots up. I want them to just scuttle back to their holes and just not poison us with all this nonsense about who, in my opinion, is one of the nicest and one of the best players in our sport. But until he has that big moment, it's going to keep happening, unfortunately. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm just saying it's a thing, and there's nothing we can really do about it.
The missed field goal against Canterbury was pretty weird, pretty bizarro world. Like, yeah, there's no excuses. He should have got that one. The other things, more Hail Mary than not. But the field goal against the Bulldogs, and I've said it before, but it's not widely known, but the morning after, he was down at Shark Park literally taking 100 field goals the next morning.
I didn't
practicing.
Know that.
Yeah, true story. So that's kind of the dedication he has. We saw this week even more rumors that he, definite rumors, nothing true about them, that he wants to go to North Queensland. And our chairman had to come out and kind of go, that's bogus. So just weird times, as you say, that we're living in.
Been a weird week for that, with him and Toto, with these stories suddenly popping out of nowhere that like these like very important players to their clubs want to leave. I don't think Toto's going anywhere either, for the record. But yeah, Nicho Hines, he's not going anywhere.
No, he's not. And it's just so annoying that there are people out there, and I say this with all respect, who don't know how to read the truth. Like, they read that and go, oh my God, he's going. And that makes me sad. Let's move on. Let's talk about the Cowboys game. I know you watched the Cowboys game. What were your thoughts on that specific performance?
Like a very flat performance from Cronulla in the ways that we've not, like, even in those losses, they showed moments. They showed flashes where I thought they could or were going to win the game in those Bulldogs and Dolphins, and even the Titans game to an extent when they came storming home in that second half. But they were just held at arm's length by the Cowboys for the most part and never really looked at it. I think and then we had I think the Mulatalo incident right on half time kind of summed up the game. It's just not a game that Cronulla really had in hand at any point. Like it just never felt like, oh yeah, they're going to win this. I know it was relatively close for the most part, but
Yeah.
yeah, I liked a little bit of what I saw from Liam Ison in attack. In defense, not so great. And then the poor guy ends his first grade debut with like Kyle Phelps standing over him, screaming at him after scoring his third try. Like that can't be fun. But yeah, I just felt that it was never really in the frame. I know it ended up being 8 points down, but that's with an Atkinson try at the end of the game when it was well beyond doubt. So yeah, just a tough one. It's the Cowboys are such a weird team this year. No one can get a read on them really. They could finish in the top 4. They could miss the finals. Who the hell knows? But yeah, I think that's just sometimes you lose. Like, I think that loss of all the losses you've had is not one that particularly concerns me because yeah, it is a tough place to go, and it was a sort of a new look Sharks team with a couple of guys missing, and now you've got 6 weeks now to get it right. You'll steamroll through a couple of these lesser teams in the competition down the stretch, starting with my boys on Saturday night. I would imagine Nicho comes back, you get to the finals, then it's a whole new game. I wouldn't be too worried about it. Is my thoughts.
So on Nicho coming back, are you throwing him straight in as soon as he's deemed reasonably close to fit?
No, of course not. You guys have the luxury of not having to do that with your position on the ladder, I think. I don't know what Craig Fitzgibbon will do. But, for example, I feel like the Broncos had to bring Adam Reynolds back a couple of weeks earlier than they originally wanted to, right? Because their season got to a point where they were in such a hole that they had to basically be like, well, we can't afford to lose any more games. So if this guy was going to come back in round 23, now he's coming back in round 21 or whatever. You guys you're not in that position, or at least not yet. I wouldn't think that would be an issue. Like maybe if you lose the next 2 or 3 games in a row somehow, but I do not see that happening. Maybe if that happens, then you suddenly Nicho's coming back in round 24 instead of when's he supposed to be coming back, like round 26 or something like that?
Well, I think right on finals time.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, maybe you'd ideally want to get a game under his belt in like round 27 or something, right? And then hopefully it's all systems go for when it actually matters.
Tell me about current Sharks. What do you make of guys like Dan Atkinson coming in and playing occasionally like a Superman, like in Melbourne where he was just 10 out of 10?
He was fantastic. Yeah, he was great in that game. Yeah, look, it's been good. And I think that this is what the Sharks have to do to be successful. This was a large part of why I felt better about them this year than last year's. Because whilst I've just spent 10 minutes talking about how much I love Nicho Hynes, I did think that especially last year, Cronulla were too reliant on Nicho Hynes. And he was almost too dominant on the ball. And where they've had games this year where Trindle's been the best spine player in the field. They've had games where Atkinson's been the best spine player. They've had games where the King Kennedy's been the best spine player in the field. The fact that they're diversifying that a little bit and allowing other people to impact the game in positive ways as much as Nicho Hynes is, and that allows him to sort of be a foil and play off the back of that at times, which he has done, I think just makes the Sharks a much more scary prospect for opposition teams, and I think it just makes them much more well-balanced as well.
Now, we are shooting around here different subject-wise, but I want to grab you now and ask you, how big a difference will Adam Fanua-Blake make next year? Like, are we going from like a 5th, 6th place team to guaranteed top 4? Like, what's the impact going to be?
It's funny because basically the whole knock on Cronulla was like, oh, they're a middle forward or 2 away from being one of the top elite teams. But basically from them, like, it was so weird the timing. Like, from like when you signed Fanua-Blake, basically a couple of these guys, most notably Tom Hazelton, really stepped up their game and really elevated their game to a level that it hadn't previously been at. So now, if you're going to add Adam Fanua-Blake on top of that, then yeah, I think it's a really scary proposition for Cronulla next year. Like they will have a really, really, really solid middle rotation. Like you're looking at the team for this weekend, right? And someone like Hamlin Uele or Toby may not even be in the 17 if everybody's fit. And that is just remarkably good depth. So I definitely think that's something to be excited about. And yeah, he'll make that forward pack one of the better ones in the competition for sure. I have no doubt about that.
Do you have any whispers from your Bunny Burrow side of things about Royce Hunt being a Rabbitoh sooner rather than later?
That was a big rumor like 6 weeks ago, right? And then he came out and had his best game of the year against the Broncos like that weekend. And then it kind of died. I haven't heard anything about it since then. So no, not really.
Would you be letting Royce Hunt go like regardless of money, whatever? I'm not talking crazy money, but would you be letting him go from the Sharks, or would you be looking to move someone else on?
Well, I think you do have one too many middles now with Fanua-Blake there. So if someone's got an offer to be a first grade starter, which I think literally any of your props would get at Souths with the fact that we're losing Tom Burgess next year, yeah, I think that would be a win-win for both parties. Yeah, whether it's Hunt or whether it's somebody else.
Who would you move on?
I'm not going to choose one of your middle. I think they're all pretty good. I would say Hazelton's the most untouchable.
Well, let me put it this way: would you let Royce Hunt go as a Cronulla admin guy?
I mean, it just depends on. It just like I'm not privy to the money as well. Like, I don't know how much these guys are getting paid and stuff. Right? That's the other problem. But like, if it is a matter of whether Royce Hunt's going to be playing every week at Souths or if he's a fringe in the 17 guy at Cronulla every week, then I think you got to let him go. But anyway, if he's on significant money, I don't. But again, I don't know how much money he's on. If he's on not much money, yeah, of course you could keep a guy like that for depth. So if someone gets injured, that's an amazing guy to bring in. But yeah, it all just depends on so many moving parts. But I think he's a really good player, and I think he'd be a wasted in reserve grade. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens there with Cronulla next year. Just too many good forwards and not enough spots to put him in.
Now, on the weekend, a lot of Sharks fans were critical of the coaching staff with their bench rotation. And keep in mind, we had a sin bin. A bunch of the guys had the flu. As a neutral yourself, did you notice any players in particular playing too long a stint, being affected by being out there too long? Anyone in particular come to mind?
I didn't notice it on Saturday, but it has been sort of a constant narrative point for the Sharks this year, the way their bench is used. And basically, especially with how good Hazelton's been and at times how good other guys have been, that there are just large parts of the game where it seems like Cronulla get bypassed a little bit in the middle of the field by the other teams when their top 2 or 3 guys are all off the field at the same time. And I think Fitzgibbon's gotten better at that as the year has progressed. But yeah, that has been a point of contention for Cronulla this year, is their bench usage as well. I didn't notice anything in particular on Saturday. I was watching without sound though. I was at a party, so.
To the naked eye, the fan in the room, etc., myself included, Tall Tom Hazelton definitely struggled towards the end of his stints, and he did end up playing, I think, around 50 minutes of the game. There were some errors creeping in, some missed tackles, etc. Fans, I'm not at that point myself, but fans highly critical of the bench use there. Like that doesn't, nothing comes to mind there.
Yeah, no, it has all year. I just didn't notice anything specifically on Saturday night. But yeah, look, that's honestly the hardest part of coaching, right? Is getting those bench rotations right, or one of the hardest parts. Like you remember back to Origin 3 last year, like Freddie got Ivan Cleary in there to help manage that stuff, and what do you know, New South Wales looked remarkably better in Game 3. I mean, there were other reasons for that too, but they really nailed that rotational stuff. I think that's a really hard thing to do, and it's really it's something you can only learn on the job. So you just got to hope that they get better at it.
All right. Well, Matthew's going to stick with us throughout the show. We're not going to keep him for hours, but we are going to do a full-length show here. So while I've got everyone's attention, we're just going to jump to a live ad. This is for our friends at Dyson Logistics, the greatest logistics company in the world. They are based on the Central Coast, but their hearts lie in the Shire. Lifelong season ticket holders, members, originally based in the Shire, now up on the Sunny Coast, but delivering product worldwide. If you need any kind of shipment help from small to large or in between, DysonLogistics.com, or call them on 02 8339 1844. Great people, great service. Matthew J Bungard, how excited are you going to be when the NRLW allows, I'm just thinking if they've got one, they don't have one, allows South Sydney into the NRLW competition?
Been waiting for a while, Sam. It's been frustrating. I've loved the NRLW since its inception. I actually covered the first season for the Herald, but yeah, it's been annoying. Like it sucks that we don't have a team, but yeah, I've just been cheering on the Sharks in that Sharks and Tigers in that competition. So I would be delighted to have one, and I imagine they could potentially get a couple of standalone games at Redfern Oval or something like that, which would be awesome. But
are there plans in the works that we know of?
No, because the Warriors and the Bulldogs are coming in next year, right? So that makes it 12 teams. And then that just leaves 5 of us still without a team. One of which is Penrith, which is crazy.
And they just got a Harvey Norman women's premiership team coming in, or they just got a license for that. So I think we'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
It's just going to take some time. But yeah, you are a big supporter of the NRLW, of course. You just love sport. You're a sport guy. I really admire that about you. But you are a rugby league expert, and you love the men's league, the women's league. Sharks with their first ever shutout on the weekend, 14-0 at Shark Park against the Cowboys. Emma Tonegado starring at 5'8", especially on that left-hand side. Went out to a 14-0 halftime lead. The score stayed that way till full-time, Matty. Very defensive second half, as well as a lot of errors creeping into the game. Superstar Nessa Biddle ran for a whole bunch of meters. She's awesome. Sharks play Parramatta this week at midday. I think it might be in the city, but you can check that out yourselves. But just looking at some of these stats, I mean, it was pretty impressive from the Sharkies. Jada Taylor ran for 100 meters, Biddle 170. Forwards did a job, and the halves of Tonegado and Preston were really impressive. So is there anyone in that team, Matty, that you love watching that we haven't discussed?
Tiana Penatani. She's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
She's one of the best players in the sport. Yeah, and look, Cronulla built that foundation on that game, much like their men's team does. Their outside backs just gobbling up meters. Like, as you mentioned, Biddle, Penatani, and Ravage, Taylor all going for over 100 meters. Really, really setting a platform for them to just win that field position battle, which they did easily. Forwards looked okay. Ellie Johnson was good. The fact that you're getting Caitlin Johnson as well next year is absolutely massive. Like, again, like, it's quite funny. Both men's and women's teams are like making really seismic front row purchases for 2025. So definitely something to be excited about. A team I think that could push for top 4 this year in the women's comp. It'll be really interesting to see. They're right in that bubble. I think Brisbane losing that game to Parramatta is massive. That really does put Cronulla sort of in that driver's seat to be up there with. I think the 3 best teams are the Knights, the Roosters, and the Titans. I picked the Titans to win the comp, but I think string a couple of wins together early on, and Cronulla could be in that conversation along with Canberra, I think, going forward. So yeah, exciting times for the Sharks women's team. I think they disappointed me a little bit last year. I thought with the talent they had, they should have done a bit better. But yeah, settling Tonegado in now to that 5'8" position more so than fullback, and yeah, I guess you just got to keep playing games with them in those positions, right, and just hope that it all clicks. But it clicked in this one, so. Yeah. As
long as they stay healthy, I think they'll be top 4 bound. I thought last year, as you said, they did disappoint a little bit. I think last year, in hindsight, was just a get together, meet everyone, let's get it on the road, let's see how we go. And this year, it's sort of go time. And then next year, as you say, with an elite prop, drilling another elite prop, that's going to be lights out. But this year, high hopes for the women's team. And as always on SharkCast Pod, you'll be hearing about the NRLW. We also talk a little bit about one of your favourite teams, the Newtown Shark Jets. They played at the Beer, Footy and Food Festival, which is dear to our hearts because we know the people that put it on. They've been doing a great job. The Rule brothers, who used to run the Annandale Hotel, a place you used to frequent, Matthew. This game featured Royce Hunt, who was sick during the week and couldn't travel up to Townsville, but he came good on Saturday to play New South Wales Cup, which is something I admire about Royce. He played a big stint and dominated. Sam Healy starred. He's an absolute gun hooker who I hope to goodness we can hang on to. Did you see the try that Christian Dixon scored on the right edge? It was the one with the absolute amazing cutout spiral from Sam Healy.
Sam, I'll be lying. I'd be lying if I said I watched much footy while I'm at the Beer Fest, to be honest with you. I know they won. I know the Jersey Flag won 50-0, but
they did.
Yeah, we had to go somewhere else at halftime. So
tell us about your experience there up until halftime.
Yeah, look, it's kind of interesting. Like, I feel like I like going to Henson Park in general when it's just a normal game. Mm-hmm. I think maybe at this point I now prefer that. I just think that this has gotten so popular that now there's too many people there.
Yeah.
And it was so frustrating because like from the previous Sunday until Saturday morning, Sydney's weather had been absolutely glorious, which was crazy because it's July. But like every day had been sunny. Like, I would literally go to Sydney Park, just sitting on the hill reading a book for a couple of hours in the arbor. Like people were sunbaking and stuff. Like weather was perfect until Saturday morning. Of course, it pours down rain, and then the hill's all muddy. So like a lot of people are sitting on picnic blankets and stuff, taking up more room. Poor old Link's sliding down the hill because he can't work how to sit on the mud. So yeah, what wasn't as fun for me as previous years, but yeah, we still had a good time.
Was it close to capacity?
It was very full. I don't think they have. Do they have a cap on these things? Like obviously they're not going to actually have 9,732, whatever the number is. But yeah, it was very. The hill was very, very busy.
Do you remember what you ate and drank?
I drank 3 beers, one of which was a hard lemonade, which was very good.
Uh-huh.
And then I had some Indian food. It was great.
Okay. Yeah. And the vibe was good?
The vibe was good. It just got really, really busy especially as it got just when it got to 3:00 onwards. I actually probably enjoyed it better during the flag game where it was a little bit more spaced out and just So.
Now, did you notice the standout halfback for the Sharks in Riley Pollard?
No.
He's a great player, man. He's got a big future in NRL, hopefully with the Sharks. Not sure.
Every time I looked up, Cronulla was scoring a try in that game.
Yeah, they won 50-0 and against the Fiji Silktails, so and they got the win, which they needed.
Where's this guy going to play, Shinazzi? You've already got so many halves.
I know, but I watch him at a junior level. I watch him train with the NRL squad, and he's just a very, very good player. He's already done a lot at the junior level, and he's got a big future if he stays fit and healthy. So just watch out for Riley Pollard wherever he plays, whether it's the Sharks, where it's the Bunnies. I don't know where he's going to go, but really good player. And the Sharks are playing Parramatta in round 5 of the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership this Monday. You can watch it on the the New South Wales Rugby League app. You can watch that. They haven't won since beating the West Tigers in round 1, so we need to get one there. Let me get your thoughts, Matthew, on the Kayal Ibro signing. 2 years. What are your thoughts on that?
Really good player. Been a great story. I know that a lot of your fans were excited to see him debut up until he did. And then, he's been a really good success story in that team this year, I think. And I think he's a guy that you're obviously going to want to hang on to for a long time. I think it's just a good bit of business.
What do you like about him?
I love his speed. I love that move to the outside that he does. I love his strength. I just think he's a really good complementary piece to all the other guys you've got in that back line. Links up really well with Mulata, with Katoa, and then Mulatalo and Ramey, and I think they all complement each other so well at the moment. It's just a really good looking back line that you've got at the moment. Good bit of business. The guy's a really solid first grader. They're the type of signings that keep teams ticking along, right? Like not necessarily a superstar, but a guy that you can get on decent money, I'd imagine, that knows the ins and outs of what the club's trying to do. He's in the first grade team every week. Won't put a bad foot forward. And so just a nice, good, solid signing. Off you go.
Now, the team is not going to look the same this week, which we'll get to in the last segment, but Ronaldo Mulatalo is injured for about a month. We broke the news on this show, grade 2 medial ligament, and Tall Tom's also going to be missing for a week at least. But do you think with Sam Stonestreet's coming in, who's a great young player, are the Sharks going to miss Ronaldo completely? Tell me your thoughts on this situation.
Ronaldo's one of my favourite players to watch. He's awesome. And the yardage that he gives you is so important to everything in terms of setting up your sets and stuff. But I liked what I saw from Stone Street when he made his debut a few weeks ago. He scored a try. Didn't look out of place. No, he's a nice big body, strong guy. Yep. He's not going to give you the production that Mulatalo gives you, but I remember he played in that game against the Cowboys, right? And he didn't let you down. So
no, he was great.
Yeah,
he was great.
It could be okay.
So if he plays well, it's his for at least a month, you would think. Last bit of news we want to talk about, and it's old news now, but still quite exciting to certain people in the Shark Land Nation. And something you can talk about. We're going to Vegas next year, games March 1st. Now, you went to watch South Sydney and you also went for your job to Las Vegas, Nevada. Tell me about your experience there for the rugby league.
Oh, yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, I never bought the line that this was all about growing the game in America. I just don't think that's going to happen. Let's be realistic about this. But if it becomes a pilgrimage for, and I think the number of Australians that went over ended up being in the upwards of 20,000 or maybe even more. If it ends up just being a yearly pilgrimage for fans of a couple of teams to come over and have a good time and celebrate this great game and watch a rugby league game at a world class stadium, which that stadium is, then I think that if that's all it is going forward, then I still think it's awesome. I had a great week. South's results aside, the events the NRL put on, both for the media and both for the general population, like the thing at Fremont Street was awesome. They did a really good job of trying to put stuff on for people to go to. That was great. They were going to have this big fan thing outside the stadium before the game for a few hours, but unfortunately, they were I'm not exaggerating here, they were the biggest wins in Las Vegas in 100 years that afternoon. Yeah. So to the point where the casino that has the roller coaster that runs through it had to close the roller coaster because it was so windy. So because that was going to be outdoors in tents and stuff, they had to cancel all that, which is not the NRL's fault. The games themselves flowed very well. The stadium is awesome. It was a really good experience. I'm excited to go again. This time just as a neutral, can just enjoy the week. Don't have to worry about my team losing. But it was great. It was really great. And I think that fans of those 4 teams, along with those 2 English teams, who I've no doubt will bring over a heavy contingent of fans as well. We'll have a good time. I think that instantly from the and this kind of happened with the first Magic round a few years ago as well. I think instantly, as soon as people back home who either didn't want to go or couldn't go for various reasons saw the first sort of videos and stuff of people in Vegas having a good time and stuff, that was when the FOMO really set in. And I think from that point onwards, people were like, right, if my team's in this thing next year or whatever, I'm going to go. Yeah, so hopefully we get a healthy chunk of Sharks fans and Canberra fans, Warriors fans, Penrith fans over there. And it should be a really good atmosphere. 4 games in a day is a lot. I won't blame people for not maybe going to that Super League game beforehand, before that we get 2 NRL games and the women's test. So I'll probably just be posting up for those 3, I reckon. Yeah, no, it was a fantastic week. I had a great time last week, earlier this year. Can't wait to go again. It'll be good to see you and all our other Sharks brethren, whoever can get over there.
There are a bunch of Sharks fans going. Can you just tell us about the stadium itself?
The stadium is amazing. The stadium is fantastic. It's an NFL stadium, and it's a newly built NFL stadium. So it only opened, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, I think, off the top of my head. But it is fantastic. It's right up there with any stadium I've been to in the world. There's not a bad seat in the house. You can see everything perfectly. Obviously, it's annoying because there are a lot of places in Vegas, especially on the strip or off the strip, where you can get beers for pretty cheap. The stadium is not one of those places, which again is why I would dissuade people from going for all 4 games unless they do pass outs. But yeah, the stadium is brilliant. There's not a bad seat. The sort of the angle that your seats are on at, it's really got that modern feel to it. It'll be great. You'll have a great time.
Awesome. Well, we can't wait to see you over there. We're going to do a SharkCast show, and you'll be on that, and I'll do heaps of episodes actually, so you'll definitely be on one of those, and hopefully I'll get on the Boom Rookies and spread the love there. But
Absolutely,
can't wait for that. Now, Matty, we're just going to tell you about my favorite place to be aside from Las Vegas, and that's the Royal Motor Yacht Club in Port Hacking. We went there last Saturday night, and a whole bunch of our listeners came along. It was real short notice. We had a great time, results aside, watching the Sharks in a group, cheering, booing, yahooing, and talking about old times and grand final times. So thank you to everyone who came down, and I definitely recommend the Royal Motor Yacht Club in Port Hacking if you want to have a bite to eat, if you want to get a drink, if you just want to catch up with someone. Beautiful views, great staff. So get down there and see them. They're on the internet, believe it or not. You can go to rmycph.com.au. They've got a membership app, or you can call them on 9523 9300. Now, Matt, we're going to get you to stick around for our mail section, and I hope you buckled in, because this can get pretty hot and heavy, as they say on Seinfeld. So,
did they know I was coming on before they sent? Did anyone know that before they sent questions in? Okay.
They didn't.
I'll be saved from the wrath of a few of my Sharks related friends.
Sometimes our listeners send really detailed letters, which is awesome. I'm trying to skim them down a little bit just to make them easy to read out, and so we'll go from here. First up is the legendary RCB. And he said Ronaldo Mulitalo should be a priority signing. He's not just a winger. He's one of the best in the game. He's a Kiwi rep. He would be an Origin player if some nerd hadn't outed him out on Twitter.
It's true. That is true.
One of our greatest ever scorers. Losing him would be such a shame. And he said, why do our best wingers always leave? Matt Rogers, Valentine Holmes, Ronnie, ? Sad. Now, first of all, RCB, Ronnie's not leaving. He's just up for renewal in the next year or so. I'm guessing you're doubling down on this one, Matt.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think he's as good as Brian Toto, but he's as important to Cronulla as Toto is to the Panthers. I don't think you can let him leave. And I don't think he will, so I wouldn't worry about it.
There was an interview with James Graham where he was talking about his future and looking after his family, and we respect all that, but it is also shop talk. Let's not beat around the bush there. Wade from the Sunshine Coast says it was a poor showing on the weekend. Discipline was terrible for the full 80. That performance is the exact stuff that Hines was playing behind for the last month or so, and people kept blaming him for losing. I bet no one blames Trindle or Atkinson for that loss, which they shouldn't, because it's the drop ball penalties and 6 agains that kill us. And you can relate to this, Matt, as a fan whose team hasn't been going that well this year. We look to all these things that are responsible, and it is the drop ball, it is the penalties, all that sort of stuff. I like the notion that Wade's saying, oh, maybe Hines wasn't going that bad after all.
Well, the thing in that Titans game especially was you didn't have the ball for the first 20 minutes of that game. Like the Titans dead set had 80% possession at the 20-minute mark or something like that. Like, you did not touch the ball. And that can't be a halfback's fault only. That was the fault of everybody, as Wade's touched on, making dumb errors, giving away silly penalties, missing tackles. Like, you were not at the races at the start of that game, and that was a team performance. That can't boil down to one guy. Hines did have a couple of tough moments in that game. I mentioned that last play of the game earlier on, but he also had that one where that loose ball went to ground, if you remember, when you were defending your own line. And if he'd scooped it up, he would have either taken it to the house himself or passed it to one of his outside backs, and they would have taken it. Instead, he dropped it, and the Titans stayed on the attack.
Yeah.
But, yeah, look, it's just so easy to blame the guy that's on $1 million, who's the star of the team every time you lose a game, right? But often that's not the case. And that Titans loss was as much of a team loss as I can think of.
Pete says, thanks for the pod. Love the work. Listen to the wrap of the Cowboys game. I agree with pretty much all your comments until you got to Toby Rudolph. I just don't see it. He never seems to bend the line. He's like a budgie flying into a window. He hits and drops, which is, it's funny because I hadn't read that part until just now. I did wrap Toby Rudolph, Matt, on the weekend. I thought he was probably our best forward, and I stand by that. I'm not suggesting he's the greatest forward of all time, but I thought he, out of all the players, really stood up. So
yeah, I've been a fan of his for a long time, but I'm just waiting for him to sort of make that leap to that next level. But maybe at this point, he just is who he is, which is fine. He's still a solid first grade prop, but there was a time, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, where you were looking to him to become like a real leader of a forward pack, and I just don't think that's going to happen at this point. But as a solid player, I think my opinion is somewhere in the middle between you and Pete. So, yeah.
Oh, look, I think he's reached what he's going to do with respect, and I'm not his biggest admirer on the field, but I call it how I see it, and I thought he was pretty good for us on the weekend, and that's where I stand. Now, Tomo wrote to us and said, after the first 2 rounds, I thought we were a premiership threat, being 9-1, but as our side consistently does, we completely lose the plot to win only 2 games over the next 11 rounds. Very disappointing. Comes down to drop ball and ill discipline. For Tomo, the season is pretty much done. He's concerned with the fact that the coach came out and said he was pretty happy with the first half performance. If that's the standard the coach is happy with, then I think we have some problems. Anyway, life moves on. Hopefully we can find the team that was playing so well in the first 10 rounds somewhere at training this week. So, has to be said, our fans, Matty, our SharkCast fans who listen to the show and they listen to everything in the media about the Sharks, they study these press conferences, which is awesome, and I do the same thing. They hear the coach say things like, I was pretty happy with the first half, and they take that as everything sweet from the coach. And I look at it much deeper. I don't think that that's what he believes. I think that Craig Fitzgibbon is a guy who hates the headlines, he hates the spotlight. He doesn't want any sensationalism around the team, and I think that's just his way of shutting it down. What are your thoughts on the way coaches act in media press conferences like that?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that unless you've earned the right, like a Bellamy or a Trent Robinson, or there's a real specific reason for doing it, I think coaches are a bit hesitant to completely tear strips off their players publicly after a loss. And I think I think this could fall into that basket. Like, he might say that he was happy with the first half, but I'm sure Fitzgibbon was letting them know privately that wasn't good enough, or that game wasn't good enough in general. So yeah, it's a tough one. I wouldn't say your season is done like Tomo would, but what I would say is that Cronulla are in an interesting spot where we've seen now 2 years of this. Like, you guys have heard the criticism every week from non-Sharks fans, soft draw, frauds, glass cannons, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. And really, the only way to shut that up is to win a finals game. Yeah. So it's kind of like this whole 2024 season almost has been a bit of a holding pattern for Cronulla, where it doesn't really matter to a lot of these people who've made their mind up about the Sharks externally.
Yeah.
What you do. It's not, none of that matters until, like, you could go 27 or 20, how many rounds? Yeah, you get 3 buys. You could go 24-0. Yeah. None of it would matter until you get to the finals and beat a couple of teams.
That's a great point.
And you haven't been able to do that. No, I'm serious. But
it's a great point.
And that is, it's such a frustrating spot to be in if you're a fan of a team like that. Like, the Ravens have kind of dealt with that as well in the NFL, like, where they've had these amazing regular seasons and haven't been able to get it done in the playoffs. And the narrative around Lamar Jackson isn't going to change until they get to a Super Bowl or something like that. And I do see a little bit of that frustration, because it's all well and good to just beat up on teams in the regular season, and then you maybe have a couple of down weeks like you have had, and then you storm home into the finals with beating up on these teams that you've got coming up on your slate. But yeah, no one's opinion on the Sharks is going to be changed until they do it in September. And I really hope that they can. I really hope that they can get a couple of finals wins in September. But there's no... As long as Ronnie's back and Nicho's back, they've got a really good chance of doing it, I think. I think the team is a little bit more balanced this year than last year. But it's just so much of their perception just depends on whether they can win a finals game or not.
I mean, as the world's biggest Sharks fan, I agree with everything you said and everything the fans are saying. Yeah, we need to win one this year. I want to win more than one, but we need to win one. I don't think that I'm sacking the coach and sacking half the team if we don't win one. I just think we're going to have to address it at some point. And 2 years in a row, let's go for a third year. If we get to a fourth, I think it's a bit of a thing. So we'll see how that plays out. But I'm with you that they did all these amazing things. They beat Melbourne with no players. They beat the Roosters. They beat the Broncos at Suncorp. They never win there. They did all these things that they said we couldn't do. Then we drop some games to teams we shouldn't. There's injuries. And all of a sudden we're fighting for a top 4 spot, which we need. And then that question that we're all talking about now is just coming around. It'll be around in 6 or 7 weeks. Here it comes. Here's the question. It's coming. Prepare yourself. So it's a very strange year, Matt. Very strange year. Terry wrote to us and said, for a team with a golden opportunity to stay in the top 4, we look flat and lacking a killer instinct. More mention of the drop balls. I love Ronnie. He's an incredible player, but he's become a bit too inconsistent. He has a habit of coming off the wing. The Cowboys exploited that. I thought Fitzy had a poor game as a coach, then questioning why Jack Williams didn't play, etc. Tell me about your boy Ronaldo coming off the wing, because there's a lot of discussion about that. We've already discussed it a lot on this show. What are your thoughts? Is it an issue? Did you see it? Was it glaring on the weekend? Was it circumstance? What are your thoughts on that one?
Kyle Feldt did score a hat-trick. So could have had 4 if after that Ronnie mishap that only got bailed out because Feldt grabbed Dyson from behind before putting the ball down. So look, if people that watch the Sharks far more closely than I do have identified this as a weakness, then I'm not gonna question that. But I mean, you can't argue with the reality which is that his opposing winger scored 3 tries.
Neil says Cronulla Sharks, the enigma of the NRL. We were sitting first, 9-1. We were the hunters, shutting up the critics. They had us all fooled. We're now 1-2 of 8 since. It's inexplicable that our attitude is less intense. The team look lost at times, lacking leadership. The slide is no fun. Can we start to climb again, or are we gone? How badly do they want it? So you're of the opinion, Matt, that we can start to climb again.
I think you'll be fine. You'll definitely win this week, and then from there, it's like because my team literally went through this last year, right? Like Souths were first at Magic Round. I have no idea. We'll never understand what happened in the second half of last year, where they suddenly just became incapable of winning games. Like Cronulla have had that to an extent, but the games you've lost, with the exception of maybe that Cowboys game on Saturday, the other ones you've lost were all very close, and you could have won them all. Like you could have won the Dolphins game, you could have won the Titans game, you should have won the Bulldogs game. And Souths weren't doing that last year when they went on that slide. They were just losing in like pathetic and listless fashion every single week. It was horrible supporting that team last year. It was a slow death march to September, which culminated in round 27 and losing to our biggest rivals to miss the finals completely. I don't think Cronulla need to worry about anything like that for 2 reasons. One of which is that, like, you know, Souths traditionally will always have a much tougher draw than the Sharks because they're a team that they want to put on TV all the time. Like, I'm not trying to be a dick. That is reality. That's what happens. And the other one is that, yeah, so I've looked at your draw, and again, you don't play a top 8 team, bar Manly, for the remainder of this season. You should be able to take care of business against a few of these teams, especially in these games at Shark Park. The slide is definitely a concern. 2 from 8 is bad, but there's nothing for me to think. Like, if you lose to South this weekend, ask me again. Then it's time to panic. But I think you'll win comfortably on Saturday night. So I don't think it's time to start worrying about things just yet. But they do need to start pulling a few wins together, for sure.
All right, Phil the Fiery from Willowvale in Queensland wrote to us. He flew up to Townsville on Friday morning, but the trip came to an abrupt end when they dished out that sort of rubbish. They were lacking mongrel and an enforcer. The support player wasn't there. I bleed black, white, and blue. Every week we say we've got to fix it. Serenity now. So he's thrown in a little Seinfeld for us all. Up, up. That's from Phil. Phil, great effort getting up there. Appreciate you writing in. Hope you had an okay trip aside from the results. I mean, sometimes we got to look above the result. When I fly to Las Vegas and if Penrith happen to beat us, which, it's a 50-50 thing, I can't be too upset because I'm having a good time, etc. And hopefully you had a good time up there. Phil, Neil and David wrote to us separately about Valentine Holmes. I've just heard he's been given permission to talk to other teams. Seems he'll be reuniting with Flano and Birdie at the Dargons. And then Dave said, is a homecoming for Val on offer? He's being shopped. I'd love him back. Now, the whole world knows how I feel about Valentine Holmes. I would marry him in a heartbeat. I would do all sorts of things with him, like living a happy life together. But he left. He broke my heart. And that happens in life. And if he wants to come back to repair my heart, then he's very welcome.
Where would he play?
I would just find a place for him, in all seriousness. I just love the man. He's my favorite player in the last whole bunch of years. And I still think he's got a lot to offer. So
you just re-signed Kyle Iro. Where would he
I haven't
play?
worked out where he'd play. I haven't worked out what we'd do. I'm just saying on a superficial level, on a level where
all right.
I would just make it happen because I love the man so much. Now, a lot of our fans don't agree, and they let me know about it, and that's perfectly fine, and I'm perfectly okay with that as well. I understand the heartbreak that he caused. I also understand that he's close to 30, yada, yada, yada. You're saying no to Val to the Sharks, Matt?
It just doesn't make any sense. Like, he'd command a fair bit of money, and your backline, we just talked about Iro for 5 minutes. Like, your backline's very settled at the moment. I don't think it's a position of need at all. And for a lot of your fans, it's not a position of want either. Sounds like you're might be on a little bit of an island, even among your own fans on this one, Samuel. Like, I mean, Val Holmes is a legend for your club, of course, 2016. No one can ever take that away. But it's been a long time since we said I don't think he's had a very good season, to be frank. I don't think he should have been in the Origin setup. And yeah, I don't know what kind of message that would send if you brought him back, especially, again, given how good your backline is right now.
Now, it's not unlike me to be on an island on this show, and listeners of this show will understand what that means. But now we will talk about the South Sydney backline shortly. I could see him going to South Sydney.
Sure. We don't have any money, so I don't know how that would work. But yeah, we're in cap hell, mate. But
we need to talk about that as well.
I mean, I take him. Like, we're like, Jesus, it's grim in the South Sydney backline stocks.
All right, well, hang on. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Kira says, I'm a very sad, upset girl. These Sharks are a worry. I want to know what's going to take to start winning again. So many errors. I could make less errors. I think, Sam, you could make less errors. Why don't you pull on a jersey and show them how it's done? Lol. Well, Kira, if I could do that, if they'd let me do it, I would do it. Even with athletes running past me, I would still do it. But I want you to stick with them because I think they're going to come good, as Matt said this week against the Rabbitohs. But she makes some great points. You can't allow a ton of points in without scoring enough. So thank you so much for writing in, Kira. Thanks for listening. Michael said, well, it says a lot about our team currently for the opposition to lose two key forwards and still be the boss of the middle. And I think, Matt, in the Cowboys game, when their forwards went down early out for the game, short bench, I thought we all thought, this is going to be good for us. It didn't work out that way. And it does say a lot about that game and the attitude.
Yeah, I think I commented on that watching. I said, look, the Sharks should steamroll them through the middle now, and it just didn't happen. Yeah, I think that would be my biggest concern about Saturday, was the fact that they lost Tamalolo and Cotter, and he didn't really take advantage of it. So yeah, that would have been very frustrating if I was a Sharks fan.
Corey wrote to us and says, it seems like the opposition teams wait for us to make these errors. The Sharks need to improve their discipline. Corey's questioning the coaching, I guess, of Craig Fitzgibbon and how we can minimize these errors. If they don't fix them, they won't be making the 8. Also critical of Ronaldo with his edge defense and questioning why Talakai isn't playing more minutes, which I think we all kind of are at this point because Talakai is just such a beast, a South Sydney prodigy, of course. I hope they fix all this up. The last thing we need is a loss against the Bunnies. Hopefully improve Sharks this week and able to sing the song again. Up, up. That is from Corey. Corey, yeah, a lot of questions there, my man, and I think you know some of the answers to that. Thank you so much for being in touch. Appreciate it. Steve says this is where Stone Street can stand up and own the jersey. He's critical of Ronaldo and the coach. he said that he heard in his press conference that there was no big issue and everything's okay. And Steve is questioning that, as well as one of our previous listeners, which we discussed. Thanks for being in touch, Steve. Jay said, I'm not here to blame the players. Sorry, I'm not here to blame specific players. The whole team needs to play as a team. It's a worry every game from here on in we may lose or drop out of the 8. There are no guarantees to make the top 4. We have to win every game to stay there. Yeah, our fans are pretty passionate.
This is amazing.
Yeah, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So Jay says, I hope they can get it together and beat the Rabbitohs, keep fighting. So there's some positivity there, but Jay is pretty stressed about missing the top 4 at the very least.
I think that is a concern, but
Yeah.
you're not missing the 8. Like, come on, what are we doing? You need to win 2 more games to make, 13 wins, you'll make the 8, right?
Yeah.
So
we want top 4, though. We want top 4.
No, I know. I think that is a concern at this point. You're right on the bubble now, especially with the way the Roosters are playing. I think they've probably got one spot locked up. The Storm for sure, Penrith for sure.
Yeah.
That only leaves one more spot. But it is a contentious little group in there. Man, if Nicho had knocked that field goal over against the Dogs, that's a 4-point swing in your favour, and then you're feeling a lot better about it. But,
I mean, if they didn't concede, was it 22 points to the Dolphins in the opening 20 minutes, they probably would have been all right.
That wasn't
too.
great.
So, lots of reasons why we're not there. Brent said he doesn't think we'll be making the top 4 and struggling to make the top 8. He also thinks that we'll be eliminated. If they get eliminated, then the coach will have to go. Now, Brent's a very passionate supporter who writes to us a lot, and he's especially passionate after losses. So he's saying no coach if we can't win that first game. Now, you and I disagree with that, but I do want to know, if that was the case, when are we going to start winning some finals games?
Yeah, well, we won't know until 6 weeks from now. But also, the problem is, it's all well and good to say sack the coach, but who's replacing him? That's the thing. Who are you getting in that's going to be better? Fitzgibbon's done a good job. You're consistently a finals team. You've been consistently a top 4 team.
Yeah, I'm a Fitz guy. I think he's in the John Lang category of sticking around for kind of 10 years and hopefully going one step further. That's how I see him. He's a young coach. It's 3 years in. I'm not saying he has all the time in the world, but I think the improvements he's made to the club are noticeable. And anyway, we'll see what happens there. Brent, thanks for being in touch. Hope you're cool. And my namesake Sam said, I'm not mad, in brackets I am, but we're just not good enough. If we're Melbourne or Penrith, we win this game against the Cowboys. So frustrating. I love the club with every fibre in my body, but they break my heart every week. Hey, it actually sounds like me as well. Well, Sam, all I can say is buckle in for a interesting ride home. I'm hoping it's going to be a positive one, but there's going to be some twists and turns. So appreciate you listening. Appreciate you writing to us. I think that's all the mail, Matt. If it's not, we'll get to it in future episodes. I do want to tell you about Jason Hawes at Crips and Crips Real Estate, the best real estate agent in the Shire, nay, the world. He's got over 20 years experience in the Shire doing his thing. Get in touch with Jason on 0410 417 450 for any kind of real estate advice, anything at all. And some of our listeners have been in touch recently with him, which is awesome. Great guy, lifelong Sharks fan. You can trust him. I know you can't trust all real estate agents, but you can trust this guy. 0410 417 450. That's Jason Hawes at Crips and Crips Real Estate. We finally got here, Matt, to the preview, which is why you're here. But first, before we get to the glorious fixture that is Cronulla versus the mighty Rabbitohs, the pride of the league, I want to ask you about your history with the Bunnies. Now, I know some of these answers, but I want our whole world to get to know you even better. Why did you become a Rabbitoh to begin with?
Yeah, so I grew up in Bankstown, which is obviously Bulldogs territory, but my parents didn't watch rugby league. My grandfather was my rugby league influence, as it still is to this day. And his grandfather played for South in 1909 or something like that. So it's been in the family since, basically almost since the very, very start. Took me to my first game against Balmain, not the West Tigers, Balmain in 1999. It was actually the last time Souths ever played Balmain. Souths won that game. It was the only game I went to in the 99 season. Got kicked out of the comp.
Yeah.
Had 2 years in the wilderness. I remember Pop came to school when I was in year 6 at primary school. Came to school to tell me that Souths had been let back into the competition in the middle of the day. It's incredible stuff. And ironically enough, I was already in the principal's office for a separate issue when he walked in. I was like, why are you here? He's like, why are you here? I'm like, which is great. I remember just being very confused about all of that. Yeah, and then they came back into the competition, been going to as many games I've been able to get to in every year since. I mean, it's hard with, not so hard now, but it was harder with work, especially when I worked at Fox, when it was, every Friday, Saturday doing stats and stuff like that. But yeah, look, it's been a roller coaster. Like, I've got fond memories of those early years when they were terrible, winning 3 or 4 games every week. That's why, that's why I tell people, like, you can say that, like, your team being like a mid top 8 team every year and not winning the comp is heartbreaking, all this stuff. But trust me, it's much preferable to being a team like Souths in the early 2000s or the Knights in the mid 2010s and winning, or in the Knights 2016 case, 1 game in the whole season. And you treasure those wins because they're so rare, but also, like, the rest of the weeks is so awful. But I do look back on it with fondness. And then, of course, they sell the club to Rusty and Peter, Mr. Crow, and Mr. Holmes at court. And takes a couple of years to get everything in place, but then they end up winning the competition in 2014. And it's you're playing with house money since then. So, yeah, no, it's been great.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I mean, you said 2014, that was our worst year in the history of the club. And I always talk about 9, 10, 11 not being much better. And if Sharks fans want to go back to that, there's ways to do that. And at the moment, we're not even anywhere in that ballpark. And I don't think we ever will be for, hopefully ever again. But you're right. Like, those hard times make these times, fine, because we went to the peak of the mountain, as you did in 2014. Tell me about your grand final experience.
Yeah, it was great. Had tickets with my family. Met up before the game with friend of our show. You might know Matt Coleman.
Yeah.
We watched the reserve grade Super Bowl, as I call it, at the Lidcombe Hotel. We're enamored by the name Northern Pride. We're like, oh, this is a cool name, and they're paying $6 to beat Penrith. So we put some money on them, and they won. They beat Penrith in that game, and so great start to the day. Went to the game, watched it. Just a fantastic. Was out in the streets of South Sydney until 2 or 3 in the morning. Just a perfect day. I'll never forget it. I mean, from the moment George Burgess crashed over to make it 12-6, I was like, yeah, we won this. And so every time I hear the song Bangarang by Skrillex, it brings back happy memories, because that's the song they played after he scored that try over the PA system at Stadium Australia. But from the moment I think South scored their next try after that in the corner, and Reynolds kicked the goal from the sideline to make it 20-6, I was like, oh my God, we've actually won. And that's when it started singing, which was great. You didn't really get that moment with your grand final, since it came down to the last play. But, like, we got that, and it was like, he kicks the goal from the sideline to make it 20, so 14 points with 10 minutes left. I'm like, it's over. We've won. These guys aren't scoring 3 tries in 10 minutes. Yeah. And we just had a few minutes to realize, like, holy shit, this is actually happening. Yeah. And then Adam Reynolds scores the next try. Then GI scores right on the siren. Yep. And yeah, it couldn't have been better. It really couldn't have been. And against the Bulldogs, the team I grew up in that area, and I hate, because I grew up surrounded by their fans who are all dickheads. So it couldn't have been any better. After beating I hate 2 teams. I hate the Roosters and the Bulldogs. After beating the Roosters in the prelim the week prior, beating the Bulldogs back-to-back weeks, I couldn't have asked for anything more.
I think you won the game, Matt, when Russell and the old guy were ringing the bell.
People got so mad about that. People got so mad. Like, who cares? They didn't get mad about the Viking horn at the Canberra grand final 5 years later. They got so mad about the Albert Cliff ringing the bell. Oh, sorry, Bob McCarthy ringing the bell. Albert Cliff.
I remember 2 things. I remember you ran out to your own song, and then you ran out, and then the bell thing. And I thought, this is laid out pretty nicely for the Bunnies. But then I remember Russell kind of almost grabbing the bell off the old guy. That was also quite a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It was awesome. It was great. I had a great time. But honestly, one of the best parts about that grand final was how angry people got about the bell. And then the cherry on top of that was that the Bulldogs, I think, got fined for coming out late in the second half after all that. So Albert Clift rang the bell in 2002 in our first game of reinstatement. He passed away a couple of years after that, I'm pretty sure. Like, I think he was 100 or something when he died. Yep. And then it was Bob McCarthy who rang the bell at the 2014 grand final, which was just fantastic. I mean, what a player he was.
That is fantastic.
And he played for both teams. He played for Canterbury as well. So, yeah.
You've had a nice run. I know it's been a bad, year, but a bad 12 months. But you've had a nice run,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can't complain about any of this, really. I mean, once you... Like, there's 17 teams, right? So on average, you should win a comp once every 17 years. And I'm being serious. Like,
no, I know.
And then And so, like, you can't really be too upset if you're a Souths fan and you've had a premiership in 2014 on the back of 2 top 4 appearances in 2012 and 2013, and then 2 bad 15, still made the finals, lost to the Sharks, but still made which was, I think, the first time ever that a wooden spooner had beaten the previous year's premiers in a finals game, which was a crazy stat. 2 bad years, 16, 17, and then from 18 onwards, it's been like prelim or grand final every year. So you can't complain about that. And they were, an Adam Reynolds missed kick away from winning another comp. So
absolutely,
yeah, I definitely can't complain about that stuff. I think I have a pretty good outlook on this compared to most people, because most people, and this goes back to what I was saying before about how sort of overly cynical we've become. Like, we've been conditioned to believe that if you don't win the comp, a season is a failure. And I just don't think that's true. Because, again, only one team gets to win the competition every year. You're saying there's only one good team every year? This year, there might actually only be one good team. Penrith and Melbourne might be the only good teams this year. But in the most case, like, there are like multiple good teams. And you can't really be too upset. Like, I don't think Souths were the best team in any of those years from 18 to 22 where they made 5 prelims / a grand final in a row. I think the Roosters were better than them in 2018 and 19. I think both Penrith and Melbourne were better than them in 2020, and I think Penrith were better than them in 21 and 22. So you can't be too upset about it.
And you have the Supercoach coming back to help you out, and that's not going to hurt anything at all. So I think that the future doesn't look too bad. I know you got the salary cap issues, but he's going to sort all that out. He sorts everything out. That's what he does.
I feel bad for Jason Demetriou. Like, we saw with the run of games Souths had in the middle of this season, where again, this is the problem. Like, Souths are one of the teams that gets a hard draw every year because they're one of the big teams that they want to put on television every week against the other big teams. So every year, Souths will play Melbourne and Penrith and the Roosters and the Broncos in the first few weeks of the season. And then they'll play all of those teams again at the end of the season. It's only in the middle for like 10 weeks where Souths get to play the lesser lights of the competition. And that's the part of the year where the team is being disrupted by Origin. And thankfully, like, this year wasn't as bad because Souths only had Latrell Mitchell and Cameron Murray in the Origin team. But yeah, it is frustrating supporting this team a lot just from a scheduling point of view, because it is like, this competition is fundamentally unfair. It just is. Like, it's not like the Premier League or something where every team just plays everybody else the same number of times. Like, it is absurd that basically, like, Souths play Canberra once a year every year, for example. Like, and I'm not suggesting Canberra are a good team or a bad team. It's just a weird quirk of the scheduling. We play them once a year every year. We're lucky to play you guys twice a year. Like, we just seem to play the same teams twice a year every single year, and the same teams once a year. So it does frustrate me.
You're talking SharkCast language now, my man. You're on good territory. And we saw that in the press that the head of the NRL said that when we get to the 20-team comp, then maybe we can do the one team each thing.
The floated idea that I saw, which was 19 games, so you play everybody once. That's nice and fair. And then there's more gaps for proper standalone Origin periods. And then with the shorter season, you have a proper international period at the end of the year. I think that's awesome. I think that's perfect.
Well, I think the same article also said, and maybe there'll be, derby games for 5 or 6 more weeks. And it's like, no. We don't need that. We need the 19 games and then get out of town. You still have all your content for TV and podcasts and print and everything.
If you go, like, I saw someone say maybe 20 games, so one extra game against your rivals, and that's all well and good to go, Souths and the Roosters can play each other. But for example, do the Dragons play Canterbury or do they play the Sharks? Like, who are their bigger? They play you guys, right? And then, okay, but then who do Parramatta play? Do they play Penrith or do they play the Bulldogs?
I understand your point. Yeah.
Moving beyond that, who do the Warriors? I guess, do the Warriors play the Storm?
I think there's even though they're so far apart.
There's a little, because Manly would play Newcastle, right?
Yeah.
And so you'd have to have like West versus Penrith and Parramatta versus the Bulldogs.
The point is, they had the perfect draw, and then they went, it wouldn't surprise me for them to do it, Matty. The NRL, they're a business. They want to make some money.
Traditional rivals, Perth and Papua New Guinea, playing each other twice a year.
They both start with P. Let's get them together. We've got a great rivalry. You and I, we're going to play each other this Saturday night, 7:35 p.m. at Shark Park. It's going to be a great occasion. Will Kennedy returns for the mighty Sharkies. Sam Stonestreet comes in for Ronaldo Mulatalo. Royce Hunt returns. So the starting front row is Hunt, Brayley, and Kafusi. Our immediate bench is Talakai. Jack Williams returns. Toby Rudolph and Braden Hamlin-Welly. Now, for the mighty Bunnies, Jai Gray still at fullback. No Latrell Mitchell. Fletcher Myers comes in for Alex Johnston, who's a local resident and a guy that we see at the cafe all the time, who we love, and is just an amazing player, so it sucks that he's out for so long. What else is happening with your team? Cheekham goes from the centre to the bench. Tallis Duncan goes to the bench. I know you've told us that the Sharks are going to win this game, and I appreciate that. But tell us about your back line, because obviously you got a lot of injuries, but the back line, in all honesty, does not keep me up at night.
No, nor should it. This is nowhere near what the South's backline was envisioned to be at the start of the season. In fact, it is 0 of 5 in terms of our full strength backline. Gotcha. If you'd asked me in round one, it's a club debut for Fletcher Myers. Yeah, look, Jacob Gago's been a great success story. He's had a really good last few weeks. It's been nice. Jai Gray tries hard. Richie Kennar has actually improved a lot, and Tane Milne is Tane Milne. Like, he can have some crazy moments, but he also can affect the game in a positive way as well. Having said all of that, the first choice backline for South would be Latrell Mitchell, Alex Johnston, Isaiah Tass / Jack Whiten, depending on which way you wanted to go, Campbell Graham, and Ty Munro. None of those guys are playing, with the exception of Whiten, who's playing 5'8". So it is very much a backup backline for South Sydney this week. It is. I don't think Latrell was any chance of playing this week, regardless of what happened last week. But I do think that now that they've lost that game against Canberra and the run to the finals is completely over now, there's a world where I don't think we see Latrell again this year. Which, whatever, is fine. Foot injuries can be tricky. Rest him up. No sense in him getting hurt. But yeah, look, it's not a particularly inspiring lineup. It's the best one they could put together.
I did skim over the fact that your captain's back, Cam Murray's back, which is huge.
Yeah. But like, again, Murray, as brilliant as he is, it's really hard to affect the game to any great effect when the squad around you is just not anywhere near what South would have hoped it would be at the start of this season. Like, this has been a lost season. It's been a complete disaster. Thankfully, after last week, I don't even have to worry about dreaming of making the top 8 anymore. But now it's just a bit, and I was going to say, like, the only thing I was really caring about in the last few weeks of the season was Alex Johnston getting closer and closer to Ken Irvine's record. But of course, he won't be playing for the rest of the season, and maybe for parts of next season. So that was a real low point in what has been a season full of low points, and that's not great.
I really loathe the word tragedy when using it in sporting terms, but hand on my heart, that is a genuine tragedy, because that guy plays the game in the best spirit. He's so talented. History of great record-breaking wingers for South Sydney, and he was on his way to being the best ever. And he might still get there. I'm not saying he won't.
I still think he'll get it. No. I was initially devastated on Sunday when it happened. I'm thinking, that's career over, all the stuff. But I thought, he's only 29. It's a 6 to 9 month layoff. So best case, he's back for round 1. Worst case, he's back in round 8 or 9 or whatever.
It'd be cool that I imagine your team will be a lot better next year under a different coach with less injuries, etc.
With all the players being fit.
So he'll be firing and the team will be firing. It'll be more fun doing it next year probably anyway, right?
Yeah, he wasn't going to get it this year anyway, Shinazzi. He needs 17 more. We've only got six games left. So he might have got to 200 this year, which was something he's on 195. So I was looking forward to maybe getting to 200, but unfortunately, that won't be happening this year. But anyway, yeah, look, the team is about as good as they can put together right now. I don't know why Jacob Hawes is still in the team. It was pretty bad last week and just hasn't really ever made that edge jersey his own at South in the way that they'd hoped he would be when he was brought over to replace Jaden Sewer a couple of years ago. Yeah, he's just been a bit of a disappointing signing, but there's nobody else really to play there at this point. Like, Cam Murray is already playing there because there aren't any other edges. Jai Arrow's done for the season, getting that shoulder surgery. The bench, Tallis Duncan has had some good moments and some not so good moments at South. I think that it's clear that he's better as a middle forward. He played edge last week. I know he scored a try, but there were some bad moments defensively. And now, look, it's sad because this will be the last time you see Tom Burgess play live, because he'll be heading back over to England at the end of this season. And
the era's over, huh?
Yeah, this is it. This is the last Burgess out of the door. So that's it. Well, until Sam comes back as head coach in 2 years. But
yeah.
But yeah, so look, there's nothing really to be excited about for Souths down the stretch, rather apart from just hoping Damien Cook and Tom Burgess can have some nice moments before they leave the club.
Both teams not in amazing form. Is it fair to say that Souths are almost in better form than the Sharks as far as win-losses go, like recent times?
Well, it is, but you've got to remember that Souths had this winning run, right? And they beat Parramatta twice, who are coming last.
Yeah.
They beat the Titans, who are coming third last. They beat the Tigers, who are coming second last. They beat the Broncos, who dropped the ball 500 times and who everyone is beating at the moment. And they beat a Manly team during Origin who didn't have Olakau'atu, Cherry Evans, either Trbojevic brother. And then I think they had 5 or 6 other guys ruled out because of injuries. They dead set had guys I'd never heard of playing. So while South did win 6 of their last 8 or something like that, a lot of that was just down to the schedule more than anything else. Like they still leaked 30 points to a Tigers team that you put 50 on and held to 6 like a week earlier. So whilst Souths are in better form, I don't really think that matters, mate. And you got to remember, Latrell Mitchell was in that team for most of that winning run, and he's not here. And I really like Jai Gray. I think he tries hard. I'd love to see him get a crack at one of our halves jerseys next year. But there's just that point of difference with Latrell in attack where you don't know whether he's going to pass short, pass long, go himself. When Jai Gray gets the ball at the back of shape, he runs it. He's run it every time. He doesn't pass, really. And maybe he'll develop that to his game, but at the moment, that level of intrigue and that indecisiveness that Latrell puts in defenders when he gets the ball, 10, 15 meters out from the opposition try line, that is a really powerful thing, and that just isn't there. So that is a gigantic loss. Like, you know how I feel about Latrell Mitchell. I think he's fantastic. And yeah, look, I just think it's far too much to overcome.
Tell me about your thoughts on Jack Whiten. Now, I'm on record as saying I'm not a huge fan in the fact that when other critics and people talk about him being a superstar of the game and all this sort of stuff, I don't really see it. I see a tough player. I see a skillful player. I see a player that won't back down, but I also see someone who's pretty headstrong, who holds the ball a lot, can make a lot of errors, both in attack and defense. I'm not saying he's no good, but the money you guys pay him, and he's been paid in the past, and the accolades, I don't personally see. Now, I'm touching wood. He might tear us up this week. What are your thoughts on Jack Whiten?
I hated the signing at the time, and it hasn't made me, nothing from this season has made me feel any better. That's not a knock on Jack Whiten himself, but we talked about I talked about Val Holmes at the Sharks like 15 minutes ago. It was the same sort of thing. They announced his signing, and I was thinking, why? We don't need this guy. This is not a signing that makes sense. We need an edge back rower. We need a halfback. We don't need Jack Whiten. And he has not really set the world on fire for South. He's been like fine some weeks and then really bad in others. Like I just have not been, and for the money he's on, like I just haven't been a fan of the signing at all.
I mean, he's versatile. He's tough. I get all that. Like he's doing a job for you in a sense. He's he probably wasn't bought to play in the halves, and now he's there for the moment. But yeah, I just thought that was a bit weird. I'm a huge Cody Walker fan. I know he's at somewhat at the back end of his career for a guy who started late in his life playing first grade. Huge talent, particularly when fit and healthy. You're a Cody guy, right?
Of course, I love Cody. I mean, I know he threw that intercept, but he was still the best player on the field for Souths in that grand final in 2021. He's been a fantastic contributor for this club. And yeah, you're right. Probably only got another year or two of him left as well. So it's already made me very sad that Damien Cook didn't win a comp with us. And now basically, unless it happens next year, Cody's not going to win one either. So yeah, it's frustrating. Anyway, enough about Souths, please. Can we talk about the Sharks?
We can. Shark Park, tell me what your thoughts are on the venue. It gets a lot of different thoughts on it, especially around finals time. You're a regular attendee at Shark Park. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, they got hard solo now, so that was a huge upgrade at the concession stand.
Sure.
But yeah, mate, it's a funny one. Like the view is awful from a lot of parts of the ground. Like, let's be real, it is. It's not a very good stadium. I like going there because my friends are there and the vibes are good. Like that, it's that simple. But from a purely, if you're a rugby league purist who's just going there to watch football games, like it's miles behind some of these other stadiums. Like that is a fact, and I'm not saying that to be hurtful. Like that is just truth. But I don't really care because I don't go there for that. I go there to be, to experience the game and to be a part of the atmosphere. And so, from that point of view, and also this weekend, I assume we'll be standing in the same spot we always stand in, which is in the corner closest to the entrance. Yeah, I believe so. The end that Katoa scored a try in front of us 2 weeks ago. Yeah, we always stand there, and that means I won't be able to see what Souths are doing for half the time. So that'll be fine.
Well, we can't wait to have you in the house, that's for sure. Before we let you go, tell me about your favorite Elliott Smith songs, album, vibes. We both love Elliott Smith so much.
Yeah, I mean, how often do you talk about? I mean, I subscribe to the SharkCast, but I'd be lying if I said I listen every week. How often do you mention Elliott Smith, or is it just because I'm here?
It's because you're here. We talk about music, but I don't know how many times I mentioned Elliott. He might have got a run before, but not too much.
I mean, it's got to be either or, right? Or maybe EXO. Jeez, that's such a tough call. They're both excellent albums. I think Angelus is my favorite Elliott Smith song, and that's on either or. So we'll go either or. And with EXO, which has Waltz Number 2, is right up there too.
I'm with you. I think either or is the standout, and EXO is just behind it. When did you get into him approximately?
You and Saxon at work.
Really? Was that right?
Yeah. Never. I didn't know who he was.
I knew Alex was a big fan. I didn't know that we had that. Okay, well that's cool. Okay, wow, good. That's excellent.
Self-title has Needle in the Hay on it, which alone might be enough to to catapult it to number one.
It's a great album, self-titled. So
Yeah,
for
all
people
four
who
of his albums
don't know who we're talking about, Elliott Smith, fella from different parts of America, but I think the Portland area specifically at some point was important to him. Quiet kind of tunes with a bit of a pop twist, but yeah, pretty sad songs.
If you've seen
voice.
Good Will Hunting, you've heard his songs. He has like 4 songs in the movie Good Will Hunting.
Absolutely great shout, and was up for an Oscar actually. And
Best Oscar, My Heart Will Go On.
Fell to Celine, yeah. But Elliott Smith, we urge you to go seek out Elliott Smith, one of the great songwriters of all time, really. And before we let you go, Matt, one of your best friends, who I first met at your wedding, is now a WWE top tier. I believe I want to say Raw or SmackDown, whichever it is. Top tier SmackDown entertainer. There's the shirt.
Got the shirt on right now.
There it is, the Grayson Waller.
Yeah, mate, I'm super proud of him. So if people don't know, this is my friend, formerly known as Matty Wahlberg in the Australian independent wrestling scene at PWA, was scouted by the WWE. It was a scary time because he got the offer just before the COVID shutdown. And so he spent a lot of time in limbo wondering, is this actually going to happen or not?
I know we need to get Grayson on the show to get the whole experience, but can you tell me how he was scouted? Did he send out a tape? Did they find a tape? Like, what happened?
No, the WWE watches independent shows all around the world. And that's why if people are listening and they like pro wrestling and that maybe they haven't given Australian promotions a try, you should check some of that stuff out. Yep. PWA especially, I've gone to a bunch of their shows. Like, the people that run it are all very nice. All the performers are incredibly talented. Yep. And if you like, the shows are at cool venues like the Crowy or the Metro and stuff. And like, if you like pro wrestling, seek it out in Australia. There's plenty of really talented people, some of who will definitely go on to be WWE stars, like Grayson Waller and like Rhea Ripley have become. So like, yeah, he just got a message from them, I think, it was 2019 maybe, and then they came to a couple of shows. They had scouts at this show where he won a sword, which was really cool. And then I think that was his last show as an Australian wrestler, and then there was the COVID shutdown and stuff, and then he lobbed up in America shortly after that and started off on like the dark shows and all that stuff, and then worked his way up through NXT, was super popular, and now he's on SmackDown. He couldn't be doing better.
How long was it from him going over to being on NXT?
Honestly, not long. Like his rise,
like 6 months or less.
Yeah, maybe less. Like he was and a lot of the times people go over there and they take a year or 2 years to like break on to like being on consistently, or maybe it just never happens for them at all, like it has with other Australians that have gone over there. But he was on there. He was on the NXT shows within a couple of months, and then he was in feuds with like the top guys on that brand within a couple more months after that. He had the awesome War Games show against like Gargano and those boys, and then he ended up on SmackDown about a year after that, and he's very happy. He's on the road most of the time now, just traveling around America. Hopefully he might be coming back here in a couple of months, but just for a little while, just like a couple of weeks, I think. I'm not sure why, but super duper proud of him. He's absolutely killing it. If you like wrestling, check out an independent show near you.
Is it like, obviously it's surreal and obviously it's deserved, but is it just kind of weird when like you're in, a Perth stadium and he pops up, or you're watching a pay-per-view and then Cena comes out and Cena does his move on him? Like, he's legitimately working with superstars, all-time greats in the business. Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, it's awesome, but like it's weird. Like I just feel more proud than anything else. I never think, wow, like, because I just always thought it was like, I always just kind of think everything's going to work out for everyone in my life. So like, if he wanted to be a pro wrestler, and he did, so, which is very funny. He didn't start. Maybe I shouldn't be telling this story because it's his story, but like he didn't start even training until he was like 27, 28 years old. Despite being like, he was the biggest wrestling fan I've ever known, like absolute wrestling nerd when he was a kid, but like didn't actually go to like a training school or anything until like his mid to late 20s. Was working as a school teacher and wrestling in like Australian promotions.
That's a great story.
And then so like he was already we were already 30, I think, when he got scouted by WWE. So,
and he also made other things happen. He was on Survivor Australia. Is that correct?
Well, I think that was a part of it, right? He got the gig on Survivor Australia, which he did while he was still an independent wrestler. But he basically, and I think that experience helped showcase his talking abilities as well. And that played a part as well, I think, in him getting scouted by WWE. But he's doing really well, really good. I talk to him most days, but
he entered your wedding reception to Stone Cold's music and then proceeded to do the can thing and pour beers on himself, and we all went, "This guy's a superstar."
Yep.
This is
it was
pre-fame.
awesome.
Pre-fame.
We've never let my other best man, Peter, forget it because he refused. He's like, "Oh, I'll get all sticky," and we're like, "So, just do it." And we've never let him forget. It's been 5 years. We still bring it up.
Peter's a great guy. I don't even remember Peter. I just remember him coming in with the kids. I remember a great wedding at Taronga Zoo. If you want to go get married and do it somewhere kind of cool, you did it at the zoo, which isn't unheard of, but you did it. And the other great thing was you had, what was the music you had? Was it, don't tell me, it was Law and Order. You had the Law and Order.
Oh, for the signing of the
sound
documents thing during the ceremony. Yeah. There's no way your listeners care about my wedding, by the
Dude,
way.
you were on all, this is my podcast.
Yeah.
You were on
It's
like
true.
all day and night. You were just zipping and zapping and you were on, man.
Try my best, mate. You've always got to be switched on. You never know what's going to come at you. You might be asked to co-host a podcast for a team you don't support, for example.
Hey, we appreciate your time. You're a busy dude. Good luck this week. I can't wait to see you, give you a hug, and maybe we'll share a solo lemonade hard drink, whatever they're called.
I hate that they changed the name, by the way. I can't believe that they
What do they change?
bowed to the well, it was hard solo, and then a bunch of nerds were like, "Oh, that encourages children to drink because children drink solo," and so the drink is called hard rated now. Terrible.
That is terrible.
Yeah, I still call it. I'm not going to change what I call it, but like the cans say hard rated on there. Ridiculous.
Yo, get me 2 hard rated, please. Yeah, it doesn't have
Sounds
the same
awful,
ring
doesn't
to
it? No, it doesn't.
All right, Matty, we'll see you down at Shark Park. If our listeners know you and see you down there, I don't know if this video is going to make it to air, Matty, because of all the lags we've both had. But if they see you down there, make sure you say, "Hey, I heard you on SharkCast. Good job." Listen to Boom Rookies. Subscribe to them. Great podcast. Been going for a long time. One of the innovators of rugby league podcasting.
Oh.
Please give it a follow, a like on the socials, especially on your podcast apps. And Matthew, we will talk to you again soon. Good luck on Saturday, my man. Can't wait to see you down there. And until then, SharkCast Pod, we are out of here. We'll be back for another episode as soon as we can. Thanks for loving us. We love you. Up, Cronulla. Let's go. Let's go.
Sharkies! Sharkies!
Fafita tries to crash his way over, he does! Fafita got the ball over the line!
And to all you people back in the Shire, tell your porch lights off because we're coming home with a trophy.